Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of In the Spotlight. I'm Mike Kenichi, and I'm very excited today because we have a very special guest. And when you talk about theater, you talk about acting, you talk about writing, directing, you name it. She has done it all. She has over 20 years in the theater world, and it is my honor and privilege to introduce to you Miss Cindi Verbelun. And Cindi, I want to thank you for coming on today. It's a real honor for me.
Oh, well, thank you for asking me. It's an honor for me too.
So, Cindi, the first thing I wanted to ask you, as a young kid, did you have a love for like plays and things like that, or was it something that just in time evolved?
I think probably ever since I've been a kid. I mean, my parents used to tell me when I was a child in grade school, I used to sit and talk to Peter Pan. I have no memory of this, but I do remember being in Kane Park Arts Camp when I think I was 9. That was the first thing I did on stage, which was Gypsy. I was in Uncle Jocko's Kitty Show.
Oh, wow. And the thing is, Cindi, that I find fascinating, and we'll get more into it, is theater. It's like nothing else because in film, you're doing several takes. You know, if you don't get it right, you do it till you get it right. In theater, everything's live and you do it over and over every night, different nights. And I almost feel like that you have to be spot on because it is live and there is no margin for error. But yet, you and so many other people make it look so easy and you do it so effortlessly. I mean, it's just a tremendous thing what you guys do when it comes to theater because it is not an easy profession.
No, it's really not. A lot of people are under the impression, the ones that don't know are under the impression it's a glamour gig. It's not a glamour gig. It's actually very hard. I'm doing things in my Zoom theater class right now that you have to really know what you're saying and know what you want and everything that goes along with that to make it look effortless. Otherwise, you'll get lost or go up or everything that can happen in the actor's nightmare.
Right. And now with theater, so many things go into theater. I mean, it's performing, it's dancing, it's singing. It has every aspect of what, some people do. They usually choose one. You have to do them all when you're out there. But let me ask you this, Cindy. As a young kid, were there any actors, singers, you name it, that you kind of not inspired to be, but you kind of looked up to and really took a liking to make you want to do this someday?
As a kid, um, I mean, everybody has their idols, even when they have feet of clay. Gee, in terms of acting as a kid, probably any of my local people that were in Cleveland theater at the time. Very young fellow, Rifshin, who played Peter Pan, or Linda Spahn, who was Cinderella. Everybody went to the Heights Youth Theater in Cleveland to see the fairy tales every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. And I
Right.
think those were probably the people back then.
Right. And I think about this, Cindy, that when you were a very young kid, I mean, some of the dance musicals that came out, I think of Grease, which is a classic. I mean, you can't get any better than Grease. And then, of course, Annie, which to this day is still as popular as it was the time it came out. But like things like that, I feel like young kids, when they're watching that stuff, they not necessarily want to be Olivia Newton-John, or they don't want to be, John Travolta, but they do like have it. There's a little, light bulb that goes off in their head that says, you know what? I think I could be good at this. I mean, did that ever happen to you when you were watching those different types of movies?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you act everything out in your bedroom. You know, I can
Yeah.
see that better than they can. But also, I was pretty shy when I was younger. I got cured of that, I really think, when I did my first lead, which was Gypsy.
Right.
Because if you have the Alhambra Theater presents Gypsy Rose Lee to change a dress, you don't care who rips it off of you. So that
Right.
can be that. But when you're shy, you don't necessarily think you're going to be better. But in my case, I thought I could be on par. I had perfect pitch. I studied at the Institute of Music. So
Right.
I guess it kind of all goes through. your head like that.
Right. And the other thing too, Cindy, I look at, we talked about the musicals and things like that, but the writing is so tremendous. I mean, you think of Annie and It's a Hard Knocks Life. I mean, that is a tremendous song.
Mhm.
There were so many great ones in that musical, but just the fact that, you hear music from regular artists throughout, your life, different songs and stuff like that. But these musicals and the writing they do and the way these young people and, the way they perform them and stuff, it's really remarkable because the writing, to me, in anything you do, if the writing isn't good, that's when it's not going to work. But if the writing is good, the actors, the performers, singers, whatever, they'll make it work.
Sometimes they have to make things that aren't so good work. I mean, people pointed out that Funny Girl really does have a weak book. So when you don't have the voice that nobody can do without, the book shows up. And then the person has to make it work. Streisand obviously made it work. I don't know that anybody else did aside of Julie Benko. But yeah, you have to make things work if you don't have the good fortune of having a book that's so good that almost anyone could step in and the show
Yeah.
would be the same.
And Cindy, you know, like I said, singing comes into a lot of this, but not everybody has a singing voice. Did you have to take any singing lessons as a young kid or when you got older to make you? Because people think when, we're in the car and we're singing a song that's on, we think it looks so easy, but there's a lot that goes into it. I mean, you got to really concentrate on your breathing or else you're going to, you know,
Mhm.
be out of it before the song is over. So, I mean, did you have to take lessons when you were doing this stuff?
Oh yes, yeah. After I did Louise, I think, and when I did Gypsy, and when I did Maria and West Side Story, I came down with a lovely case of sinus. That's when I found the vocal teacher I'm still with, who's Leslie Varnick, and she actually gave me a belt voice because at that point I only had a head voice. Because West Side Story, Maria does not need anything below here, But if you're going to play Anita, you need to be able to belt. So she actually taught me about breathing, about what you can do when you're not in great shape to sing, like steaming and vaporizing and all kinds of tricks. I think while I was doing West Side, I used to get up on the Sunday matinee and I would put a horrible concoction of tea with Hall's mentholyptus drops in it and drink that and then steam. And it actually gave me enough to get through the show. So you have to learn all those things from people that have been through it. I
Right.
know people on tour now. Nick Cartel, who plays Jean Valjean in Les Mis, and is a wonderful person to ask on any of these things, talks about vocal rest and 1 week, a 1 day a week show rest so that your voice can take the punishment and you don't end up messing it up for the rest of your life where you can't ever work again.
Yeah. I was going to bring up West Side Story later on, but since you've talked about it, I'll tell you, I think that's everybody's dream to get a part in that play and do it on Broadway or theater, whatever the case may be, because what a classic. So just talk to me about what that experience is like. And you got to play Maria. I mean, it's the main role. So, I mean, that had to be something very special for you in your career.
It was, but I'll tell you, it was the second lead I did. And Gypsy was, I called it the Chief Cook and Bottle Washer Show. It was Polish National Home Hall, Console 6 with holes in the stage in the middle of the summer and no air conditioning. So you get your baptism in fire, but then you step into something like West Side Story and you have to get to the fact, obviously they hired you because you know what you're doing, or at least they think you do.
Right.
And it's hard if you really don't. It was a challenge because I had never done this type of production, which was at Willoughby Fine Arts, which is now the Fine Arts Association. And those were a step above the typical Chief Cook and Bottle Washer show. Fortunately, we had a really great group of people that were working extremely well together. We had a director who was hilarious. We had a Halloween party the week before the show opened, and she came as Ms. Pac-Man. It was not, your typical. A lot of these, when you get into professional theater, because this was community theater, these are more fun, let's get together things. But this show really was done about as professionally as you could do it and not have equity contracts in the show. In the long run, I wish I could do it again because I could have enjoyed it more. I was so busy being worried I wasn't going to get it right, or I was going to wake up the voice tomorrow, because I didn't have the experience to know that there are ways you can combat that. And I would have just been able to enjoy it more if I could have done it now. But now the 20-year-olds are old enough to be doing what I was doing then.
And you talked about having a Halloween party before a week before it came out, and the other thing of doing what you do is you meet so many different people and you develop friendships with these people.
Mhm.
And to me, that's life is all about the opportunities that you get a chance at. And I mean, getting to like, I'm sure some of these people are still your friends to this day, and I mean that alone has to make the experience worth it.
Oh, absolutely. Theater, anytime you do a show, the cast becomes your extended family. I mean, I have a lot of those. And as far as meeting people you want to meet, I work as a co-host on the Ray Carr Show on WCSB, which is Cleveland State Broadcasting.
Yeah.
Excuse me, a little early. And I also do my own show, which is, everyone knows it's Cindi on, it's called IHateFreeSpeech.net, but it's a joke. You couldn't speak more freer if you tried on this station. But because of that, I've been able to meet a number of people. Excuse me. Meet a number of people who have made this their life's work, like Allison Ungram, who played Nellie on Little House on the Prairie. We've met Jimmy Webb, wonderful writer. Gosh, there are so many to talk to. Jerry Lee Lewis and his wife, back when he was living. Dick Dale and Lana Dale. Lana's one of the nicest people that you
And
could.
correct me if I'm wrong, Cindi. One guy that I really love, I've enjoyed his work forever, is Ben Vereen. You've met him, haven't you?
I got very lucky. I was able to work on the Youth Theater America One Night Only Jesus Christ Superstar benefit in 2006. And that was in Los Angeles. That's because of the website you talked about, the first Ted Neely list. I've met hundreds of people all over the world that joined that list. It used to be with Yahoo Groups. It's now with Groups.io. And one of them, Janine Bugiata, was working on that show. And she emailed me and went, "We're doing this in LA. You have to come out." And I said, "You have a bed I can sleep on?" And I spent 14 days there. I think it was, we put this whole thing together in 14 days. Ben Vereen, who played Judas, was very quiet. You wouldn't think so because you see him on stage.
Yeah.
And he's like firecrackers, but this was a very quiet guy who, he didn't just so much keep to himself. He was not all over the place ingratiating, but because he was busy. This was the first big thing he had done probably in years. And he more than rose. And the reason they had him was because Carl Anderson, who had done the show with Ted Neely in all the tours, unfortunately had passed on. And it's funny because Carl was the understudy to Ben. But I remember going with Janine to buy him jazz shoes, because apparently whenever he did a show, we needed a new pair. And we're walking down Vine Street looking for the shoe store. And he was a very nice man. Just about everybody in the show. I mean, we worked with Ted Neely, Yvonne Elliman, Jack Black, Ben Vereen, Barry Denon, most of the people that were involved in the original movie in 72, in 73 was when it was released. And Jack Black actually was very shy I think about his work, because he came in to rehearse and they literally put a chair and a velvet rope by each stage entrance. We're like, okay, well, who's here, God? And it turned out what it was that he didn't want anyone to see him practicing because he was not very confident about what he was doing. He was hilarious when the show went on. So you never really know that some of these people that you think can do this in their sleep might not actually even be confident that they could do it as well as you're doing it. It's definitely an eye opener.
And I think that's why they're so successful, though, because they, like anything else, they're like people like me and you, like where when we got to do something that, you know, we make it look easy, we are nervous, because if you're not nervous, then you don't, to me, you're not taking things serious enough, because there should always be nerves in anything you do when it comes to podcasts, acting, theater, you know, whatever the sports, whatever the case may be. Without nerves, you really aren't like taking the role seriously.
Exactly. My acting by mistake teacher, Bill Rauderbush, says that if you don't have nerves, you don't really care as much about what you're doing. Now, in some cases, you can combat them better.
Yeah.
But if you don't have nerves like before you go on, you're either too tired or too fed up, or you shouldn't be there, really. I've
Right.
had days where I'm not as nervous, but invariably, right before I go on, I'm like, I think I want to go home now, or something like that,
Yeah.
until you get out there.
Right. And speaking of William, you're a standardized patient actor with Case Medical School and Studies. Talk about that a little bit, because that seems like a really cool thing as well.
Well, it is on an as needed case by case basis. And what they do is they bring actors in to play patients for the students that are training to be doctors. Or if you're in the law school, students training to be lawyers, and they give you a case. And usually you have about an hour's worth of training, either on the web or right before you do the case. And they go over everything to make sure you're going to give them the right information. Then you go into the exam rooms where the students come in one at a time. And you might do this, I don't know, 6, 7 times in a day. I did one this past July where I was there for 2 weeks every day, which that you pray for, because when they pay you $25 an hour, you can do the math. Okay, this bill got paid this month. If you come in one day, maybe you're going to get, I don't know, 100, 150, but it's still, you got to pay your bills somehow. And this is fun because you get to practice your craft while you're working with them. And it makes you feel really good when they know all their questions, and what you give them helps. And if they're getting good feedback, which sometimes we hear about, or sometimes we can give, you're helping people that you could unfortunately possibly have a chance of being in front of someday when they have their license.
Yeah.
So helps train them, but it can be fun too, because you get to sit in the lounge and chat with everybody, and it makes for an interesting day or few days of work at a time.
Right. Cindi, one thing that, the years go by so quick, because this has been 22 years now, but it doesn't feel like that long. I could still remember stuff from 2002 like it was yesterday, but you've been with a theater company called the Mercury Theater Company for 22 years now. I mean, that's a long time with one company. And just talk about the success of that company and how rewarding it's been for you, because, I mean, obviously, so much of what you learned and what you've done comes out of that company.
A lot of it did, yes. Mercury started business as, well, actually, oh, I don't even know if I should say this. Am I going to get bleeped if I explain what the original name of this company was?
I mean, it's nothing offensive, right? Or anything.
Let's just say it started out as, I believe it was Courage, Love. I can't remember what the I stood for.
Right.
Courage, Love, something theater. And you can do the math, okay?
Okay. Yeah.
That was for the very first year.
Yeah.
Whoops, you just disappeared. Should I be
I'm
worried?
I'm I'm here. I see you. I could see you. Yeah.
Yeah, that's, and I remember saying to them, really, guys, but when you're in college and you're 25, but it changed to Mercury Summer Stock,
Right.
I think the next year. And it was Mercury Summer Stock for probably, I'd say about 15, 16 of the 22 years. And then they decided to go to Mercury Theater Company because they were going to be doing work year round rather than just in the summer.
Right.
And these guys are incredibly intelligent. I mean, they spent their whole life studying this. Pierre, Jacques Brault, and Brian Marshall. And unfortunately, once COVID hit, with expenses being bad, and then the college we were at closed also. So
Right.
Mercury at this moment, I mean, they're saying we're finished, and I'm like, no, you're on hiatus. You'll be back because everybody comes back. May not come back as Mercury, may come back as something else. But over 22 years, I learned how to be a stage manager, an office manager. They cast me in numerous shows. In fact, it was funny. I think I played at least 3 roles named Grace. So I was like, gee, I could just cast me. Have you got a Grace in this show? I'll play her.
Yeah.
And yeah, again, it's extended family, and it it has, like everything, it has its ups and downs. People come in to do certain shows, and you wish they hadn't used them for numerous reasons. Other people come in, and it feels like you met them 50 years ago on day one.
Right.
I've always had that anyway. I can get in an elevator with someone I've never met. By the time we get off, we're planning lunch next week. But when they're people persons, it always helps. And this was also like culture shock because Mercury did shows in 10 days. I mean, from a first table read to opening night, 10 days. And when you're doing shows like Thoroughly Modern Millie, or we did Amelie, our last show was Amelie, or gosh, Chaplin, things that have a score like nobody's business, and a cast of 30, like 30 Thoroughly Modern Millie, doing choreography and having to learn all this stuff. Sometimes they would be a little more prepared, but they would be coming in hopefully off book day one, because if they weren't, they were going to be in trouble because they had to focus on blocking and choreography and the sets going up today. One of the last things that we did, Amelie, we had a tech director. We don't know if he had a breakdown or just skipped town. But we ended up building the set. He built most of it, but it wasn't delivered. So here we are, 2 a.m, going over to the shed, pulling out what was built, what is, and go back over. You have to cut bricks today. We have to. Fortunately, the set designer had not gone home yet. So
Yeah.
at least we had someone there that knew what it was supposed to look like. And it got pulled off, but that's not something you ever want to get into. But working in a company for this many years, it gives you a really solid background to do anything else, because there probably isn't anything that could happen to you that you haven't at least seen while you were working in someplace that long.
Right. Some of the performances you've done, I mean, it's hard for you to pick one or even pick five that, stand out to you. But, I think of you got to play Miss Maud and To Kill a Mockingbird, which had to be so much fun. And then Granny and Beverly in the Shadow Box. I mean, some of these that you've gotten to do, I mean, they got to be so much fun for you. And I think that's the best part about this, Cindi, is you play so many different characters and so many different roles that, I mean, you get to be somebody else all the time, and that has to be fun.
It is. It's a lot of fun. Miss Maudie was, once I got over the terror, because Miss Maudie was the narrator of To Kill a Mockingbird. So I had 9 monologues, and I was narrating all the scenes, and we never left the stage. So I had a crib sheet shoved up my sweater, but I never could look at it. And I think once in the entire rehearsal and run, I messed one line up. And fortunately, it was during a preview with only 3 people in the house that were related to one of the actors. And I had 2 moments where I stepped into an X on the stage. And the first one was to say something about when they came back 2 hours later, Calpurnia was still expressing her rage, which was a cue for the housekeeper and the 2 kids to come on. The only other time I was ever in that spot came out that night, which was Tom Robertson was sent to Enfield Prison Farm, 90 miles away. The jury was on they were not on stage. The verdict had not been given. I basically gave away the next scene in the show, and the next line I would have had would have been a set change. So I just sat down and went, I don't want notes tonight. I don't want to know him to know I'm alive tonight. Fortunately, to his credit, he never said anything. But some of the other ones, like the Shadow Box, I waited, I'm going to give some of my age away on this, 42 years to play that. Because when I saw the show way back in the 70s, I loved it. But the only person that's in that show that's a child is the son in one of the in one of the stories. There are no children in the show, even the college children. These characters, they can be played by college people, but you really have to have an understanding of life, because the character I played was 42-ish, and she was a junkie and a druggie and a hooker and an ex-wife and a really out there woman. No college kid is going to understand all that. Yeah. But Bill gave me that present. He decided to do this with our Zoom class. And it was very hard work, but it was so much fun because I'd been preparing script-wise forever. So I could concentrate on everything else we were having to do and not think about it. When you have that much in your head that is settled because you've worked on it and it's like part of your brain work. Andrew May, when he did Hamlet, used to do his lines when he was doing the dishes or cleaning the house. Yeah. Because this way he could get Shakespeare down and not have to think about it. Well, when you work with these lines for 40 years, then you end up having them as part of your inside the whole long scene with all the big monologues I'd known that many years. The other scenes I had to learn, but it was a real gift because I finally got to do something I'd waited forever for, and I had auditioned previously for it. But I'm 4'10" and a half. That's the other problem. If everyone else is 6'3", I'm looking at their daughter. Zoom is the great equalizer. I'm 5'7" on Zoom. It's what I wish I could be. You know, when you get to play these roles, you're correct. The other one that really sticks out for me is Becky into Black Patent Leather Shoes, where they reflect up. We had to learn to dance in oversized patent leather shoes. They were tap shoes, and they were like this long. Wait a minute, there. Try to tap in something like, and I'm not a dancer by first choice. I have to work months to learn things to where it looks like I know how to do this, because I have 2 left feet, 2 right hands. But we had to learn how to tap in those, and by golly, I did it. You know? And it was just so much fun. That was another show I'd wanted to do since I'd seen it at Playhouse Square in the 80s. And I got to play my favorite role in it, which a lot of people don't get that gift. That was thanks to Debbie Duffy Young, who toured as Sister Helen in the National Touring Company. And we actually got to recreate that. We had the touring company set, the touring company script, we had the touring company choreography, even the ad-libs. She brought them all with her. And then she brought the actress who played Mary Kenny to see one of the shows. And she said, we were all up there in the booth just crying because it was like we were watching ourselves up there. Yeah. It's just great. You don't get to do that a lot.
Yeah. And that's, you know, like I said, it's so invaluable when you get to experience stuff like that. So real quick, Cindi, talk to me about this podcast, because it's, you know, catching on very well, and it's on every Thursday, correct?
Oh, my show. Yeah. It's called Everyone Knows It's Cindi. I started it with a co-host named Scott Baker, who works in Los Angeles. He works with, oh gosh, I want to say that it's Warner Brothers. I'm pretty sure it's Warner Brothers. And it was his idea. He said, you know what? There's a song by the Association called Everyone Knows It's Windy.
Yeah.
You know, remember Windy? He said, why don't we just call it Everyone Knows It's Cindi?
That makes sense. Yeah.
Made up off the top of his head. So that's my opening song. Only everywhere it says Windy, he's saying Cindi. And what it is it's a Broadway show. I've covered different writers, different musicals. We started out, I think, with Sondheim and Jason Robert Brown, and then I've done Stephen Schwartz. Currently, I'm doing James Lapine.
Yeah.
But we've also done subjects like shows about jobs and working, such as Working by uh, oh gosh, Turkle, Stud Turkle. And also things like we did one for Tennessee, but as in SEE. It was when all that insanity was going on down there. We did
Yeah.
a huge show with all songs about that. Oh gosh. Did about Here We Are when it came out, Sondheim's last musical, because not everybody knew a lot about it. I did see it. I don't recommend doing it the way I did it. I took the China bus up overnight,
Yeah.
did a day and a half, and took it home. And I did it on I was medically compromised, shall we say. Not a great thing, but it was the only time I had to do it because I was going to ragtime rehearsals the next week. But so I saw Here We Are, and I thought, well, people aren't going to even know, even if they introduce this, what it is. So I've been teaching some of the people on I Hate Free Speech who are also part of WCSB, and they didn't even know half these musicals. I don't even know half compared to people that are equity or SAG and AFTRA and make their life's work this. I haven't done that yet, but I know a lot more than the folks at the college radio stations. So they'll tune in and they'll listen and say, I didn't even know about this musical.
Yeah.
You know, and I learned a lot of them from the Mercury Boys because they went to college, studied them, and they were the ones going to London every summer and New York when they could. Dan Marshall, who used to be our associate manager, he used to work for the Met. He was there, I think, for about 12 years. He's now working as a professor in Berkeley, NYC. So he's
Right.
got firsthand knowledge of what's going. And he's writing things also. We did some of his original works. But see, you bring things out like I did Jacques Brel. It's been years, or I did Closer Than Ever. A lot of people don't even know it, but it is to me one of the best reviews I think that ever was written, and it was made up of songs that they cut from other musicals. It's like
Right.
Sondheim's Marry Me a Little was made up of songs cut from other musicals. And those are the things that I play on my show. And when I have people on, I interviewed Allison from Little House, Allison Arngrim. I interviewed
Yeah.
Ted Neely and Frank Munoz when they were coming here for a Superstar screening. And I talked to Michael Shevsky, who, if you want to know Cleveland TV and radio history, that's your guy, because he was part of WMMS in its heyday. If you're familiar with them, they called it the
Yeah.
soundtrack of Cleveland. It was really the soundtrack of the world. So he had all the stories, and he came on. But I don't do a lot of interviews, at least not yet. I do mostly music, and I can
Right.
go 2 hours. I can go 5. Depends on how much material I have and how tired I am that evening. But
Right.
it's fun. It's an outlet, and I can say I have a radio show because on the Ray Carr show, I'm the co-host, but it's mostly what he's doing, and I fill in the blanks. You know, I have a segment called Entertainment News.
Right.
So that's Tuesday from 6 to 9 a.m. Eastern.
Oh,
And
wow. Yeah.
yeah, I'm up at 4 because I got to be at a house 4:30 and get over there by 5. If I don't have that place cleaned out before he comes in, it's a circus. So I'm like, you don't know what they've done in there the night before. Particularly when we come in the week after Halloween, God knows, because they're going to have everybody in there. And if you want somewhere where you can actually work, to get in and clean it up. Where I am when I do, everyone knows it's Cindi. I do it right where I am here at my desk.
Right.
That's the other thing that's nice. When you're done, you shut off the computer, you can go to bed.
Yeah. That's pretty good. Yeah. But Cindi, I think it's remarkable what you're doing. I think between the theater, the acting, the podcast, everything, it just goes to show that you're willing to put the work in to make it happen. And you've created such great, memories for people to be able to watch. And hopefully one day I could watch a show live of yours. That'd be awesome to see. But I mean,
Sure.
I do think what you're doing is just, amazing, and just keep doing it. And we're going to continue to support you. And thank you for giving me some time today. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Mike. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate that.
Well, folks, there you have it. I advise all of you to check out Cindi's work. I mean, go on the internet. You could check her website out. You can check a bunch of things. She is a talented and hardworking individual who continues to just create great, theater, art, music, you name it. She does it all. Give her a look because she's one of the best, you know, theater actresses you'll ever see, and her work is very underrated. So keep supporting Cindi because she really is a phenomenal talent. For In the Spotlight, I'm Mike Kenichi saying goodbye, everyone. Okay, perfect.